My name is Amelia. It's a simple name, one that feels like a quiet Sunday morning, like the worn linen of my grandmother's tablecloths. I grew up in a part of the city people drive through on their way to somewhere else, a neighborhood of narrow houses with postage stamp lawns and the constant, gentle hum of lives lived without fanfare. My mother was a librarian, a woman who found sanctuary in the hushed aisles of the city's oldest branch, and my father taught history at the local community college. They gave me a childhood rich in stories and quiet observation, but not in connections or capital. My path into the world of finance was an unlikely one. I didn't see it as a world of power or wealth, but as a place of beautiful, intricate patterns. Numbers were a language I understood instinctively. They were clean, logical, and honest. They didn't have hidden agendas or subtle condescensions. I earned a scholarship to a good state university, worked my way through, and graduated with a degree that promised a different life than the one I'd known. I was recruited by Blackwood and Finch, an investment firm whose name alone sounded like old money and mahogany-paneled walls. I thought I had found a place where my love for order and analysis would be valued. For a time, I believed it was true. The first few years were a study in the art of being useful. I was praised for my meticulousness, my diligence, my supportive nature. These are the words used to describe the scaffolding that allows others to build their monuments. I was the one who found the flaw in the model at 2 in the morning, the one who fact-checked the presentation slides while the presenters were at client dinners, the one whose research formed the bedrock of strategies that were never credited to me. The office was a finely tuned ecosystem of power. At its center was Julian Croft, a man whose charm was as polished as his Italian leather shoes. He could command a room with a single, cutting remark, his confidence an impenetrable fortress. His second-in-command was Marcus Thorne, who lacked Julian's incisive intellect but compensated with aggressive loyalty, echoing Julian's opinions with more volume but less substance. Then there was Isabel Vance, a master of political maneuvering who could shift allegiances with the seamless grace of a migrating bird, and Leo, a quantitative analyst of breathtaking talent who was so terrified of conflict that his brilliance was often buried beneath a quiet apology. And then there was me, Amelia, the ghost in the machine. My ideas, when offered in meetings, were met with polite nods and the dreaded phrase, "That's an interesting thought, Amelia." We'll circle back to that. The same idea, rephrased by Julian or Marcus 10 minutes later, would be hailed as a breakthrough. I watched men my age, with less experience and demonstrably weaker results, ascend the ladder, their promotions announced in firm-wide emails that I would read at my desk, a cup of lukewarm tea in my hand. For 4 years, I played my part. I smiled through the casual condescension, absorbed the subtle dismissals, and perfected the art of invisibility. I told myself it was a form of dues-paying, a necessary period of apprenticeship. But a quiet, persistent voice inside me knew it was something else. It was a slow erasure. But while they were overlooking me, I was studying them. Not just their weaknesses, Julian's reliance on gut feelings over hard data, Marcus's insecurity that led him to propose reckless, short-sighted strategies, but the system itself. I saw the opportunities they missed, blinded by their own orthodoxies. They chased explosive, high-risk tech and dismissed the slow, steady power of sustainable enterprise. They courted titans of industry and ignored the revolutionary potential of small, community-focused companies. They saw the world as it was, or as they wanted it to be. I was learning to see it for what it could become. So, I began to build something of my own, a secret garden cultivated in the hours before dawn and on quiet weekends. With the modest savings I had carefully accumulated, I opened a private investment account. My laboratory was my small apartment, the one with the view of the old brick warehouse across the street, its windows like vacant eyes. My research tools were not the firm's proprietary algorithms, but public library databases, industry newsletters from niche sectors, and online forums where engineers and ecologists talked about the future. I didn't invest in the titans Blackwood and Finch courted. I invested in a company in Oregon developing biodegradable packaging from mycelium. I bought a small stake in a cooperative in the Midwest that was pioneering regenerative agriculture techniques. I found a startup in Colorado, founded by two female engineers, that had developed a low-cost water filtration system for rural communities. These were companies driven by a mission, not just a margin. They were, in the parlance of my colleagues, noble causes. Unscalable. Uninteresting. My first small investment, the Mycelium Packaging Company, doubled in value in 10 months. I sold half and reinvested the profits. By the end of my second year of this parallel life, my personal portfolio had quietly outperformed Blackwood and Finch's flagship fund by a margin that would have been a firing offense for one of their fund managers. At the office, nothing changed. I was still Amelia, the reliable, detail-oriented analyst who was good with spreadsheets. During my annual review that year, Julian sat across from me in his vast corner office, the city skyline a glittering backdrop to his casual dismissal. "The issue, Amelia," he said, steepling his fingers, "is that you lack a certain boldness. You're excellent at the micro, but you struggle to see the grand vision." This was 2 months after I had submitted a detailed proposal on investing in renewable energy infrastructure, a proposal he had personally shelved as too speculative. That same sector was now leading the market. I nodded, absorbing the critique as I had learned to do. "Thank you for the feedback, Julian. I'll work on that." I accepted the standard cost of living raise while my male peers, whose grand visions had led to 2 underperforming quarters, received promotions and substantial bonuses. That night, I didn't feel anger. I felt a profound and unsettling clarity. The game was rigged, and my choices were to either accept the rules or leave the table. But I was beginning to suspect there was a third option, to build my own table. The opportunity arrived 6 months later, disguised as a failing company. Its name was Viridian Dynamics, a subsidiary of a larger, languishing conglomerate called Arcadia Holdings. Viridian had developed a revolutionary suite of soil sensors and data analytics platforms for precision agriculture. Their technology could help farmers dramatically reduce water and fertilizer usage while increasing crop yields. It was brilliant, vital work. But the company was a mess. It was hemorrhaging money, bogged down by inefficient management inherited from its parent company, and on the verge of being dismantled and sold for parts. My colleagues at Blackwood saw only the red ink on the balance sheet. I saw the seed of a forest. I spent a month of late nights digging into every facet of Viridian, from its patent filings to interviews with former employees. I built a financial model that showed a clear, albeit challenging, path to profitability. It required a radical restructuring, a significant capital injection, and, most importantly, a leadership team that actually believed in the company's mission. I wrote the most comprehensive and passionate analysis of my career. It was more than just a financial document, it was a blueprint for renewal. It argued that breaking up Viridian for a quick profit would be an act of profound short-sightedness. I sent the 40-page report to Julian, Marcus, and the entire strategy committee. The response was silence. A week later, Blackwood and Finch was hired by Arcadia Holdings to advise them on their portfolio. Their primary task was to manage the orderly liquidation of their underperforming assets, with Viridian Dynamics at the top of the list. Julian called me into his office. "Amelia," he began, his tone one of weary disappointment. "We've been retained by Arcadia. Marcus will be leading the engagement." He gestured to my report, which sat on the corner of his desk unread. This is a non-starter. It's sentimental. Our job is to maximize shareholder value, not to run a charity for farmers. My analysis shows this path creates more long-term value, I said, my voice quiet but steady. The client wants a quick resolution, and that's what we will deliver, Marcus interjected, standing by the door. He had been promoted to lead the project, and I was to be his supporting analyst. My role, he clarified, would be limited to data aggregation. I was not to have any contact with the client. The first strategy document Marcus produced for Arcadia was a butcher's block. It recommended firing half of Viridian's staff, selling off its most valuable patents to an agri-chemical giant, and shutting down the remaining operations within 6 months. It would generate a handsome advisory fee for Blackwood and Finch and extinguish a spark of genuine innovation from the world. I knew then that my time at the firm was over. But I couldn't just walk away. I couldn't let them destroy Viridian. That afternoon, I was CC'd on an email from Human Resources. Citing my misalignment with the strategic direction on the Arcadia account, I was being placed on a mandatory 2-week administrative leave to reevaluate my role within the firm. It was the first formal step toward being fired. They thought they were caging me. In reality, they had just opened the door. Those 2 weeks were the most focused of my life. My apartment, once a sanctuary from the office, became my headquarters. The view of the old brick warehouse was no longer a symbol of stagnation. It was a reminder of the solid, enduring things that people often overlook. I didn't have a network of billionaire investors. I had something more valuable, a reputation for integrity and diligence among a small, eclectic group of people who, like me, saw value where others didn't. I started with Dr. Eris Thorne, a retired environmental science professor who now managed a small, ethical investment fund she had started with her inheritance. I had met her at a lecture on sustainable economics a year prior. Dr. Thorne, I said over the phone, my Viridian report open on my screen. I've found a company that embodies everything we talked about. Its technology is transformative, but its management is killing it. The corporate vultures are circling. I explained the situation, walking her through my analysis not as a pitch, but as a shared discovery. She listened patiently, asking sharp, insightful questions. By the end of the call, she was intrigued. Send me everything you have, Amelia. Next, I called a small cooperative of organic farmers I had connected with through my research into regenerative agriculture. They didn't have deep pockets, but they understood the profound value of Viridian's technology. They saw it not as an asset to be liquidated, but as a tool for their own survival and a better future for their industry. Slowly, painstakingly, I pieced together a coalition. Dr. Thorne brought in a few of her academic colleagues who had also come into money and wanted it to do good in the world. The farmers' co-op pooled their resources. I contacted the 2 female engineers from the water filtration company I had invested in. They had recently sold their company and were looking for their next project. They understood the struggle of being a small, mission-driven company in a world that only valued scale. We formed a private holding company. I named it Sylvanus, after the Roman deity of woods and uncultivated lands. It felt right. We weren't raiders, we were cultivators. Our plan wasn't a hostile takeover, but a quiet rescue. Arcadia Holdings was a publicly traded company, and its stock was deeply undervalued, depressed by years of mismanagement. Working through a broker, we began to buy. We moved carefully, accumulating shares in small blocks to avoid attracting attention. By the time my 2-week administrative leave was over, our little group of academics, farmers, and engineers, led by a supposedly sidelined analyst, had acquired a controlling interest in Arcadia Holdings. The final paperwork was being drawn up. No one at Blackwood and Finch had any idea. I returned to the office on a Tuesday morning. My security badge didn't work at the main entrance. After a stilted conversation with the lobby security guard, a junior HR representative came down to escort me upstairs. Her expression was a mixture of pity and discomfort. "Amelia, hi," she said, avoiding my eyes. "There's been a change of plans. Julian has decided to extend your leave indefinitely while we reassess the firm's needs." "I see," I said calmly. "I'd just like to get my personal things from my desk." We walked through the open plan office. A few heads turned, then quickly turned away. My corner felt alien, my chair already occupied by a new hire. Julian intercepted us, holding a small cardboard box. "That won't be necessary," he said, his voice stripped of its usual charm. It was flat, dismissive. "We've packed up your things for you." Inside the box were my favorite ceramic mug, a framed photo of my parents, a well-worn copy of a poetry anthology, and a small succulent plant, its leaves brown and shriveled from 2 weeks of neglect. "We'll mail you your final paycheck," Julian added. "I think we can all agree that a clean break is for the best." I took the box from him, my hands steady. The weight of it was negligible. "I wish you the best, Julian," I said, my voice even. "By the way, how is the Arcadia account progressing? Did they accept the liquidation strategy for Viridian? A flicker of irritation crossed his face. There have been some unexpected developments with the client's board, he admitted, his jaw tight. Nothing we can't handle. Those unexpected developments were, of course, us. The day before, as the new majority shareholders, Sylvanus Holdings had issued its first directive, an immediate freeze on all third-party consulting engagements pending a full review. Marcus's meetings had been cancelled without explanation. I walked out of the Blackwood and Finch building for the last time, carrying my small box of belongings. The city air, usually thick with exhaust fumes, felt clean and sharp. I didn't feel fired. I felt free. For the next month, I worked from my apartment, but it was no longer a solitary command center. It was the hub of a vibrant new enterprise. As the newly appointed, and still anonymous, chairperson of the holding company, I directed the restructuring of Arcadia. Our first act was to replace the old board with a new one, including Dr. Thorne and the lead engineer from the water filtration company. We then turned our full attention to Viridian Dynamics. We fired the cynical management team and promoted the brilliant, but previously ignored head of R&D to CEO. We injected the capital needed to scale production. We implemented a new strategy, the very one I had detailed in my report, focusing on long-term partnerships with farming communities. The change was immediate and electrifying. Employee morale soared. Production efficiency jumped by nearly 40% in the first 2 months. A company that had been on its deathbed was breathing again. Then came the moment to close the circle. With its future secured, the new board of Viridian Dynamics decided it needed a long-term investment advisor to help guide its expansion phase. They invited proposals from a handful of top-tier firms. On my recommendation, Blackwood and Finch was included on the list. The final stage of the selection process was a presentation dinner to be held at the Gilded Quill, a restaurant so exclusive that its reservations were a form of currency in the financial district. It was the same restaurant where Julian had hosted a celebratory dinner for a closed deal a year earlier, a dinner I had prepared the briefing materials for but was not invited to attend. The new CEO of Viridian, a sharp and energetic woman named Sophia, played her part perfectly. She informed Blackwood and Finch that, as a gesture of goodwill and to ensure continuity, they should bring the analyst who had done the initial work on the company. They would need me. The call from Julian was a masterpiece of cognitive dissonance. His voice was strained, wrapped in a transparently false layer of warmth. "Amelia, good news," he began. "It seems we may have acted a bit hastily. Viridian Dynamics has specifically requested your presence at their strategy dinner. We'd like to offer you your position back, effective immediately." With a significant raise, of course. I let a moment of silence hang in the air before replying, allowing my voice to hold just the right note of grateful surprise. "Julian, that's wonderful news. I would be happy to attend." "Excellent," he said, relief evident in his tone. "Now, just to be clear, your role at the dinner will be strictly observational. Marcus and I will be leading the presentation. We just need you there to show the client we value your historical input." "I understand completely," I said. The stage was set. I arrived at the Gilded Quill a half-hour early. The maitre d' led me to a private dining room with a sweeping view of the Port Sterling skyline at dusk. The long table was exquisitely set for 14. Sophia, the Viridian CEO, was there to greet me, a knowing warmth in her eyes. We had spent the last month in near constant communication, but to the rest of the world, we were strangers. "You're early, Amelia," she said, her voice carrying just enough for the staff to hear. "A bit nervous, perhaps?" I smiled back, just eager to listen. She showed me to my seat. It was at the far end of the table, as far from the center of power as possible. The place card, in elegant calligraphy, simply read, "Amelia." Every other card for the Blackwood team included a full name and title. "I trust the seating is acceptable?" Sophia asked, her eyes twinkling. "It's perfect," I replied. The Blackwood and Finch team arrived in a phalanx of dark suits and confident laughter. Julian led the way, followed by Marcus clutching a leather-bound presentation, then Isabel, and finally Leo. They stopped short when they saw me already seated, a brief moment of confusion rippling through their ranks before their professional masks snapped back into place. "Amelia," Julian said with a curt nod, before turning his full attention to Sophia. "Ms. Reyes, thank you again for this incredible opportunity. We are exceptionally excited to present our new, forward-thinking strategy for Viridian." Marcus placed his presentation in the center of the table, pointedly avoiding my gaze. Isabel and Julian flanked Sophia, while Leo, after a moment's hesitation, took the seat directly across from me. He gave me a small, hesitant smile. "Good to see you, Amelia." He was the only one who had sent a brief, awkward text message after I was let go, wishing me well. I gave him a genuine smile in return. Leo's weakness wasn't malice, it was a lack of courage, and I knew how paralyzing that could be. The rest of the seats filled with Viridian's new board members and two other people the Blackwood team didn't recognize, Dr. Eris Thorne and a grizzled man named Ben, the head of the Farmers Co-op. They were introduced simply as advisors to the board. The dinner began with the usual corporate ballet. Julian was in his element, holding court with anecdotes about Blackwood's triumphs. The first course, a delicate seared scallop dish, was served. Not once did anyone from Julian's team speak to me or include me in the conversation. I was, once again, the furniture. I took a slow sip of water, watched the city lights ignite one by one, and waited. Halfway through the main course, just as Julian gave Marcus the signal to begin their presentation, Sophia gently raised her hand. "Before we begin," she said, her voice cutting cleanly through the low murmur of conversation. "I have a question, if I may." She turned her gaze down the long table to me. "Amelia, our team was reviewing the preliminary files from Blackwood, and we were quite intrigued. Could you tell us a bit about your role in the initial analysis of Viridian?" The entire Blackwood contingent froze. 12 pairs of eyes swiveled to me. This was not on the program. Julian recovered first, jumping in before I could speak. "Amelia provided invaluable data support for our senior team," he said smoothly. "Compiling figures, background research, foundational work, you could say." "Foundational work," Sophia repeated, tasting the words. "That's interesting." "Because we also found a full, 40-page strategic document under her name. The one that argued passionately against liquidation and laid out a detailed plan for restructuring and reinvestment." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 5 degrees. Julian's smile became a thin, hard line. "That was an internal thought exercise only," he said, his voice dangerously low as he shot me a look of pure venom. "A junior analyst's proposal that didn't meet the firm's rigorous standards for client presentation." "And yet," Sophia mused, tapping a finger on her wine glass, "it seems to be an almost perfect predictor of the path we've independently chosen to take. The path that has led to our recent success. It's almost as if someone understood our company's potential better than the official strategy Blackwood was proposing at the time." Marcus, who was still half standing, slowly lowered himself back into his chair, the presentation forgotten. Isabel's practiced smile had evaporated, replaced by a look of sharp, cautious calculation. "Perhaps," Isabel suggested, her voice silky, "we should proceed with the current presentation. We're here to discuss the future, not relitigate the past." "Actually," Dr. Eris Thorne said, speaking for the first time, her voice calm and academic. "I believe the past is profoundly relevant to this discussion." She turned her kind, intelligent eyes to me. "Amelia, perhaps you could clarify for Mr. Croft and his team your current relationship with Arcadia Holdings." The silence in the room was absolute. It was so quiet I could hear the faint hum of the city traffic far below. I carefully folded my linen napkin and placed it on the table. I met Julian's gaze, then Marcus's, then Isabel's. "I am the chairperson of Sylvanus Holdings," I said, my voice no louder than it had been all evening, yet it filled the entire room. "The private investment group that acquired a controlling interest in Arcadia Holdings 6 weeks ago. We initiated the leadership change and implemented the restructuring strategy for Viridian, the strategy one originally authored while at Blackwood and Finch." Julian's hand spasmed, knocking over his water glass. A dark stain spread across the pristine white tablecloth and his presentation notes. No one moved to help him. That's impossible," he stammered, his face pale with shock. You don't have that kind of capital. You don't have those connections. I built them, I replied simply. Over the last few years, I cultivated a private portfolio focused on sustainable and overlooked companies. It performed rather well. That track record attracted partners who, like me, believe that value is about more than just a quick sale. Partners like Dr. Thorne and Mr. Davies here. I gestured to the farmer, Ben, who gave a gruff, satisfied nod. So you're the new owner? Leo whispered from across the table, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and dawning admiration. I nodded once. My partners and I control the parent corporation, yes. Dr. Thorne addressed the table. As part of our new direction, we are reevaluating all of Arcadia's service provider contracts. Blackwood and Finch's engagement is, naturally, under review. Julian finally found his voice a raw, angry thing. This is a clear conflict of interest. This is unethical. There certainly was a conflict of interest, I agreed gently. When I was an employee of Blackwood and Finch, being sidelined from an account while I was simultaneously exploring an investment in the parent company. But that conflict was resolved when my employment was terminated. It was administrative leave. Julian shot back, a reflex of corporate jargon. The box of my personal effects suggested otherwise, I said, my tone still mild. But the semantics are not important. What is important is the future of Viridian Dynamics. Sophia nodded. Precisely. And we need to be certain that our partners share our vision for that future. She gestured to a waiter, who began distributing slim leather folders to everyone at the table. The Blackwood team opened theirs with a palpable sense of dread. Inside was a single sheet of paper, an updated organizational chart for Arcadia Holdings and its subsidiaries. At the very top was Sylvanus Holdings, and listed beneath it, as chairperson, was my name, Amelia Thorne. Not just Amelia. My full name. Below that was a proposed advisory structure. The box for lead investment advisor was conspicuously blank. This can't be legal, Isabel murmured, staring at the page as if it were written in a dead language. I assure you it is, Dr. Thorne said. The acquisition was conducted with meticulous adherence to all SEC regulations. No insider information was used. Merely a better analysis of publicly available data. But she was on our team. Marcus protested, his voice cracking. She had our data. I had my data, I corrected him softly. The data and the analysis you and Julian rejected. The analysis that got me put on leave. You had every opportunity to see what I saw. You chose not to look. Julian stared at me, the shock on his face slowly being replaced by a grudging, resentful understanding. You planned this. All of it. I saw an opportunity, I said. Just as I saw dozens of opportunities that Blackwood and Finch dismissed because they didn't fit a preconceived notion of success. Or perhaps because the person presenting them didn't fit a preconceived notion of a visionary. I stood up, not to be intimidating, but because it felt like the right thing to do. I addressed the entire table. As the controlling partner, I have serious concerns about continuing a relationship with a firm that so fundamentally misjudged the value of our core asset. Therefore, Blackwood and Finch's advisory contract will not be renewed. Julian's face flushed a deep red. This is retribution. This is petty and unprofessional. This is a business decision, I said, my voice calm and firm. Based on performance. However, I continued, my gaze shifting, I also believe in recognizing individual talent, wherever it's found. I looked directly at Leo. Leo, your analytical models are elegant and insightful. You have a gift. But it has been consistently stifled. We are building a new internal strategy team at Arcadia. We would be honored to have you on it. Leo stared at me, speechless, his eyes glistening. And Isabel, I said, turning to her. Your ability to navigate complex political landscapes is undeniable. If you could apply that skill to building collaborative partnerships instead of just managing internal rivalries, you could be a tremendous asset. You're trying to poach our team, Julian snarled. I'm offering talented people a new environment, I countered. One where contribution is the only currency that matters. Where people are not punished for having a vision that differs from their superiors. Those who wish to explore this opportunity can speak with Dr. Thorne after dinner. The choice is entirely theirs. The finality of it settled over the room. The loss of the Arcadia portfolio would be a devastating blow to Blackwood and Finch. It was more than a single account. It was a public repudiation of their judgment. I picked up my water glass. Thank you all for coming. Sophia, thank you for a lovely dinner. I believe our business for the evening is concluded. As dessert was served, the Blackwood team huddled together, their hushed conversation a frantic buzz of damage control. Leo, however, excused himself and walked around the table to where I was sitting. Did you mean it? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. About the job? Every word, Leo, I said. All I ever wanted was a chance for my work to speak for itself. I think you want the same thing. He nodded, a slow, dawning smile spreading across his face. Thank you, Amelia, for seeing me. Across the table, Julian was making a last-ditch effort, speaking earnestly to Sophia, who listened with polite, impenetrable patience. When the dinner finally ended, the Blackwood team left as a shattered unit. Julian didn't look at me as he passed. He looked straight ahead, a man staring into a future he no longer controlled. After they were gone, Sophia raised her glass. To seeing what others can't. Dr. Thorne raised hers. And to building a better table. I raised my glass to join them, the crystal cool against my fingers. I didn't feel the intoxicating rush of victory or the bitter satisfaction of revenge. I felt a quiet, profound sense of rightness. It was the feeling of a garden, long neglected, finally being tended. In the year that followed, Viridian Dynamics became the jewel of Arcadia Holdings. Our technology helped thousands of farms transition to more sustainable, profitable models. The company culture we built was one of collaboration, respect, and fearless innovation. Leo became our head of strategy, and his confidence bloomed in the open air. Isabel, to my surprise, took the offer and, after a difficult adjustment period, channeled her formidable skills into building powerful coalitions with environmental groups and government agencies. I never spoke to Julian or Marcus again. I heard through industry gossip that Blackwood and Finch suffered a difficult year, losing several other key clients in the wake of the Arcadia debacle. Their story was a footnote in mine. My office at Arcadia headquarters overlooks the city, the same view Julian once had, but it feels different from up here. It feels wider, more full of possibility. On my windowsill sits a succulent plant. It's not the one from my old desk. That one was too far gone to be saved. This one is new, a vibrant green, its leaves plump and full of life. It's a simple, living thing, and I water it every morning. It reminds me that growth is always possible with the right light and the right care. It reminds me that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not to tear down what is, but to quietly, patiently, and persistently build what can be.